In the Circuit Court for the 9th Judicial Circuit in and for Orange County, Florida, State of Florida versus Casey Marie Anthony. As to case number 2008 CF 15606-0. As to the charge of first-degree murder, verdict as to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty, so say we all, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, on this 5th day of July, 2011, signed foreperson.
John, why don't you come on in and sir, you come in too. A couple of other legal analysts are joining us here.
Thank you for being here today. All right.
And you are? Richard Kurtz. Hey, Richard.
And Richard Kurtz.
Thank you for being here.
John Phillips and Richard Kurtz.
Richard, let me get your take. You were standing there. You watched the verdict being read. What did you think?
I wasn't surprised at all. I really was not surprised. My only thought and concern was going to be they were going to compromise and come back with a second, because clearly there was never able to prove an intent element that's required in court. So I'm actually not surprised.
And John Phillips?
Contrarily, I was surprised. I really thought that it's too soon for a murder one, but I really thought they'd bring it down, and they threw acquittal and murder one off the table, and they found something in the middle. The fact that she could be walking free at the end of the week is truly surprising. If they run those sentences concurrent, she's done more than her time.
Let's go to Bruce now, who is with our other analysts, and taking a look at some pictures, some rare pictures of Casey Anthony now during this trial, during this phase. Amazing smiles, and just looks like everything has fallen away from this individual.
Well, let's not forget the fact that she was found guilty of 4 misdemeanor charges. What we're waiting to find out is whether or not she is going to be remanded back to custody. The fingerprinting process continues right now. There could have been what Jay explained to you before as an ROR, released on her own recognizance, if a first-degree or second-degree murder conviction wasn't handed down. We'll know whether or not she's going back to jail or wins that ROR based on the way she leaves the courtroom. If the deputies come up and handcuff her, she is going back behind bars, pending the sentencing hearing on Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. Let's go back to our other analysts, Richard and John. Richard, you're John Ashton. You're the prosecution. Obviously, Baez is happy as all get out. But what do you think about the prosecution? What's going through their mind right now?
Well, the thing about when you lose a case, you actually learn so much more from your losses than you're ever going to learn from your wins. So I'm sure he's absolutely racking his brain going through and deciding what did he do wrong, what could he have done different, what would he have changed if he had to do it all over again.
And John, if you were to analyze what went wrong, what would you say it was? To
the exclusion of any reasonable doubt. They just didn't prove that high of a standard. There was stacking of inferences and circumstantial evidence everywhere, and Casey Anthony appeared dirty. She appeared to have done this or had been involved with this, but there was no linking of her DNA or her fingerprints or her actually committing this crime or disposing the body, and I think that's where they missed that link.
And basically the jury looked at her and said, okay, you know what, Casey Anthony, we don't think you're sympathetic, we don't think you were a very good mother, we think you lied to the cops, but we don't know about anything else. All right, she's being escorted out of the courtroom, but not in handcuffs. So?
Release on recognizance. She's probably free until Thursday by all signs, and as we said up on stage, there's a very likelihood that these charges can run consecutive, meaning one after the other, or concurrent, meaning they ran all together. And the fact she's been in jail for all this time, she may be hitting Orlando at the end of the week, although she may want to get out of town.
Well, let's poll our panel of lawyers here right now. Sentencing happens on Thursday morning. She's served 3 years already. John, I'm going to start with you, then we'll go to Richard, then we'll go back to the other studio to Jay and Janet. Does she get credit for time served, or does he slap another year on for each of the misdemeanor charges?
She'll get credit for time served regardless. It's just whether those other charges add up and keep her in jail. But I think she's done.
Richard, do you think she sees any more jail time?
No, she's absolutely done. The question is she going home right now, or are they going to have to process her back to the jail just as a procedural matter? But if she's not going home right now, she's going home Thursday afternoon.
Mary, by the way, if you'd like to weigh in, I know that Ashley Townsend is standing by right now. You can do so if you go to newsforjax.com and click on the conversation room. It's a chance for you to give us your feedback. You can also do it on my Facebook page, WJXT for Bruce Hamilton, the morning show page, or the local station page. Everybody's going to have a differing opinion. I asked you what you thought was going through John Ashton's mind, what went wrong. Jose Baez, he is a lawyer with not a lot of experience. Is he going to sit back and say, I'm going to write a book, Richard?
I think there's a real possibility. Obviously, there were so many things that happened in this case that are very intriguing and very unique, and people would want to know what was really going on behind the scenes. What was she really thinking? What was she really feeling And did he really think this was going to be possible?
And John, I think we also, I said this before, but we also have to reiterate, just because a jury finds somebody not guilty, it doesn't mean they think that that person is innocent.
The state didn't prove it. The state didn't prove that she killed Kaylee, or that she abused Kaylee. And I'm still a little speechless about it. But yeah, Jose Baez is the happiest guy in the state of Florida today.
Now, I can tell you that, can we take you inside the courtroom right now? There's a room that's been set up where the jury is going to speak. Had they handed down a first-degree murder conviction, of course, they would have remained anonymous at this point through the sentencing phase. All right, Jim, let's take you back inside the courtroom where it looks like there's something happening where the jury is about to be seated. I imagine you can see them waiting for the... Okay, let's listen right now. So, after the clerk read the verdicts themselves, the judge went ahead and polled the jurors to make sure that their decision was unanimous. They assured him it was, and then shortly thereafter they held a news conference. I was a little surprised that they identified themselves, but the four women seemed to make it evident that they were competent in the decision they reached. And I know that there are people out there, because I was reading some of the comments on Facebook and Twitter and online, people are going to say, you know what, the system doesn't work. Others are going to sit back and they're going to say, you know what, the system did exactly what it was supposed to because there was reasonable doubt. And I think people have to understand it's not a perfect system, but it's the best system we've got.
Absolutely, it's the best in the world. It's not just the one we have, it's the best in the world. And it's the government's job and their burden to prove the case beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. And then sometimes it just doesn't happen. And this is a case where it just didn't happen, and the jury took the time, followed the law, and voted their conscience, and the verdict was not guilty.
And I know that legal analysts are going to dissect this case, the jury's decision, any subsequent interviews they do. If you're not familiar with the way the court system works, there's a process called voir dire. And basically what they do is they go through a process of selecting the jury. In this case, it was done in Tampa because they were afraid there was too much pretrial exposure. Too many people in the Orlando area knew about it, so they went to another community to try and find impartial jurors. So it's going to be interesting to see what jury analysts, John, want to know from the impact of this case and how it will affect the way lawyers choose jurors in capital murder cases in the future.
Absolutely. These 12 jurors made one decision, 12 other jurors would make a different decision. I know the state took issue with number 4 and preserved some rights with regard to juror number 4, who was a Catholic woman who said that she could never find the death penalty. And so there's still some appeal happening. There's still a lot, but absolutely, at the end of the day, and I try more civil cases than I do criminal, but regardless of which side, anybody that thinks, any psychologist or lawyer that thinks they can pick a jury and guarantee a victory or even 75% of an anticipated verdict is just wrong. You never know what a human mind's going to do. And
I think everybody's going to sit back and they're going to be in agreement that given the fact that the little girl lost her life, there may never be justice for Kaylee, and that weighs heavily on a family, on a community, and those who follow this case.
It does, and it begs the question: if in fact Casey didn't do this, which one of her friends or family or ex-boyfriends did it? You know, there's still justice remaining for Kaylee. I appreciate Jose Baez's commentary, but if this is true, her murderer is still out there because clearly she didn't die in a swimming pool.
Now, I know that there can't be a case of double jeopardy, but the fact of the matter is when you have a capital murder case, there's no closure either. The investigation can be ongoing. How does that impact what happens from here?
There's not going to be an ongoing investigation. I have that from clients all the time. If I'm found not guilty, what are they going to do next? They're not going to do anything because they believe you did it. And it's not necessarily who did this to her, but what happened. What really happened? That's the question that I would be asking them. Unfortunately, we're never going to know what really happened. But the investigation's over. State Attorney's Office, law enforcement, they're not doing anything to further this investigation. They think it was Casey Anthony. Jury said it. You didn't prove it. It's over.
And you know what? This is real life. This is not Law and Order. This is not CSI. There are so many unsolved murder cases that are on the books. In fact, perhaps, John, more than they're solved.
Absolutely. And Jacksonville's up there in the rankings with regard to murders, unfortunately, and how many high-profile. I mean, Richard handles many more than I do, and he only handles, the entire criminal bar here only handles a percentage because most of them just go unnoticed.
No, I think the fact of the matter is that this young woman is going to remain under great scrutiny. John, you said kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I think you're right on. TMZ is going to have a camera on her. I mean, she has a reputation for being a party girl, for dating a lot of different people, for not exercising the best judgment. And there's going to be cameras out there, reporters out there. We live in a tabloid society. People who are looking for her to make some sort of a misstep.
Absolutely, and the general public is going to be out there looking. You know, they're going to the cell phone picture alone of her holding any alcoholic beverage in the world for the next week is worth, you know, several thousand to tens of thousands of dollars. And this is the world of media where we can take pictures and do whatever in an instant. And she is as hot of a name as anybody in the country right now. I wouldn't want to trade places with her for many reasons right now at all.
And you know what? You know, had she not been subject to such public scrutiny now, some of the pictures that have been posted, you know, of her being a party girl, her dancing, semi-nude or what have you know, they mimic what we see on Facebook so often for college kids and high school kids these days. But because of the circumstances surrounding her life, it's a much different world for Kaylee Anthony. She has to watch her step.
Oh, she does, because like you mentioned tabloids and magazines and books, we talk about bias. Oh, they're going to be all over her. We're going to hear numerous articles, numerous magazines, no matter what it is, tabloids are going to be all over her. There's going to be all kinds of offers for her to give an interview. People are going to want to hear from her. And the amazing thing is people are going to either love her or hate her, but that's what's going to sell the magazines.
And people are going to want to hear from the jurors, too. It's 3:08. I've just been told from the people who are in the courtroom that some of the jurors may come out and speak publicly. We did hear from the jury forewoman, and I guess it's a foregone conclusion. And I think Judge Perry mentioned this. The booking agents are already out there, and pending what the verdict was going to be, they're going to be all over the morning shows, the evening shows, and what have you. If you could sit down with the jurors and ask them one question, what would it be?
One question. You know, I don't know. I mean, there's so many questions in this case. To try to narrow it down to one question in this case. Me, as a defense lawyer, I'd want to know, what was the closest thing to making you think guilty? What was there that had you thinking, well, maybe I missed? Was there something you thought I missed, but you managed to come to terms with it on your own? That's what I would want to know.
John, would you want to know whether or not there was any disharmony in the deliberation room, or if everybody from the get-go pretty much seemed on the same page?
Clearly they did. I mean, clearly they were pretty much on the same page to have a verdict done in 8 to 10 hours worth of deliberation, as was said by many people along the way. This was a tight-knit group, despite the fact there was 20, you know, that boiled down to 12. This group had synergy, and it was whether, you know, where they were going to go with this, and there was clearly some leaning early on. But, you know, my question would, if I were the state, is, you know, where did I go wrong? What was that link that I didn't make? You know, did you need DNA or fingerprints? Because this was one of the best circumstantial cases I've ever seen.
And the reality is, you know, we are set to be tried, if we ever find ourselves in court, by a jury of our peers. And some people sit back and they wonder whether or not the jurors take their charge very seriously. And it's amazing because they do adopt this demeanor and understand that somebody's life or death is at stake, and they take that responsibility very seriously.
Oh, absolutely. And in a case of this magnitude, you know that they did. Because first, we started with death qualifying him in the first place. So we're talking your decision, the things that you're listening to and paying attention to. At the end of the day, that prosecutor's going to stand up and ask you to not only convict her of first-degree murder, that man's going to stand up, look you in the eye, and ask you to return a recommendation, a vote and a recommendation that we execute her. And so that's something they obviously took very, very serious. And one thing that we haven't really touched on is because they were sequestered and they were together so long, they build mention the word synergy. The groups get to know each other. Yeah, they get to know each other. They already start, they're not on talk about the case, but they're already getting to know each other. So when they go in the back and it's 8 to 10 hours over the course of a couple of days, they already know each other well. And so the conversations should go relatively smoothly, and obviously it did to resolve in the period that it did.
But there's some people who are going to sit back and say, okay, they've been holed up in a hotel for 33 days. Yeah. You know, they really haven't had any contact with their families. It was a holiday weekend. We know that one of the jurors has a cruise that they're supposed to leave on the 7th.
That's right.
You know, does that play into it at all, or you just hope not?
It does. It's human nature. It can't not. And we know as trial lawyers that you're dealing with 6 to 12 humans here, and their schedules and their lives, and they want to get home, and that's a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.